When I first started studying VR and transitioning into VR design years ago, I rolled up my sleeves, I put on a headset, and I learned a very important lesson very quickly. And what I was seeing in all of the experiences that I was trying, they were all using the same mental models of gaming, the same terms, the same or similar mechanics per genre, and all of the expected behaviors that you would have from those genres of games. And so, as a result of that, I got a PlayStation 4 Pro, and the first game that I played on it was Persona 5. And it completely spoiled me to every other game after that because I'm probably going to fangirl on this game. It's the graphics, everything is beautiful. It took 5 years to create this game. Understandably so. There are reasons why games take so long to create, all of the detail that has to go into them and everything. So, today, finally, we are going to be learning from Persona 5, and we're studying the branching narrative genre. So, what can Persona 5 teach us about branching narrative and XR/UX design? What does this even have to do with XR/UX design? So I'm going to play the game, a little bit of the game, talk out loud while I do it, and then after that we're going to do an analysis, or it's called a rose thorn bud analysis, and then talk about how that translates into XR/UX design. The goal here, the reason that I stream here, is to help you get experience practicing your critical thinking. Participating in the analysis is how you can do that in the chat through adding your own comments to the rose thorn bud exercise while I'm doing that. And if you check the show notes, you'll see the details of the rose thorn bud, how that works. And this critical thinking, this ability to critical think, is a very important skill for any UX design job, regardless of whether it's in XR or traditional 2D or whatever. And this skill of learning from games so that we can create better immersive experiences is also an important aspect of gaming. I learned that very quickly on my first project. So how do you participate? You check the show notes to get the info for the rose thorn bud, and then you make your own comments in the chat as I'm going through. What are the things that are going well? What is a highlight? What do you like? What do you not like? And that is how we're going to participate in this based on UX best practices and gaming best practices. And if you don't know what those are, I do have some links in the show notes to. He's trying to go back and play a trailer. I do have links in the show notes that you can learn more about game design and UX best practices for XR if you check the show notes. So you can help me take notes in the chat as I go through this. That's going to help me out a lot. It's going to give you experience working with a team on competitive landscape analysis. And competitive landscape research is an important part of the design process. Once besides the user testing, the usability research, and the user research, there is a type of design research known as competitive landscape research. And what we do once we've identified the problem that we're trying to solve, we'll see how other people have solved that problem. And in our case, we're looking at the genre of choices matter or branching narrative. And so we're going to look at how does Persona 5 handle branching narrative. And if you're watching later, it's not too late. You can still add your comments to the video. I do check those later. And let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start a new game. I have completely played through this thing. I finished it, but we're going to start a new game. Getting all my DLC.
This story is a work of fiction. Similarities between characters or events to persons living or dead in your world are purely coincidental.
Slightly annoyed right now because I changed the language to say Japanese and I saved it twice and it's in English. I hate the English voiceovers. I hate them.
Only those who have agreed to the above have the privilege of partaking in this game.
I'm going to not agree.
I see. Everything that happens from here on in is real. Is that your cognition of this? Then unfortunately, I cannot allow you to partake of this game. I must ask that you leave.
This is a clever way of handling an upfront warning because this game is set for people of a certain age or older because it of the nature of the game and what it has to do with mental health and so forth. So it's set for certain age groups and not to be played by people that have issues with um, telling what's real and not real. But how would they be able to know? I don't know. But it's a clever way of handling a warning. But I'm going to go back because I want it in Japanese. It's going to annoy me otherwise. That's one of my quirks. And I'm kind of annoyed because I already said this twice. And it keeps changing it. And there's a slight delay because I'm going from my PlayStation to my PC. So here it is. I turned it on. It is on. Okay. Right? It's on. Okay. Okay. We're gonna do a new game. And I'm gonna go through all the DLC again. I wonder if this is just a limitation of PlayStation. I'm guessing it is because it's PlayStation pop-ups. Much better. This story is a work of fiction.
作中のいかなる人物、思想、事象もすべて紛れもなく、貴君の現実に存在する人物、思想、事象とは無関係だ。
Similarities between characters or events to personas living or dead in your world are purely coincidental.
以上のことに同意した者にのみ、このゲームに参加する権利がある。
Only those who have agreed to the above have the privilege of partaking in this game. I will agree this time.
確かに受けたまわった。
Contract has been sealed.
今世界はあるべき姿にあらず、歪みに満ち、もはや破滅は免れない。
The world is not as it should be. It's filled with distortion and ruin can no longer be avoided.
定めに抗い変革を望む者、それは時にトリックスターとも呼ばれた。
Those who oppose fate and desire change from time to time, they were referenced as tricksters.
汝トリックスターよ。今こそこの世の歪みの深淵に立ち向かうがいい。
You are the trickster. Now's the time to rise against the abyss of distortion. Coming from a graphic design background, I absolutely love the design of this game, all of the UI, everything. Someone's there. He said someone's there. Okay, this is our onboarding experience. The boy's voice. Good, now get running. And one thing that was very good that I like about this experience is that it did not autoplay. It played the cutscene, which is normal, you would expect that, but it at the beginning when it was doing the dialogue, it manually progressed the dialogue instead of automatically progressing it, which is very important especially in XR. And here now in the onboarding experience, it's manually progressing, which is very important for XR. There are different ways that you can handle the manual progression, but in this case it's in 2D, so it's going to translate a little differently into XR. But manual progression is very important. Stay calm, you can get away now. We'll retrieve the briefcase on our end. Suspects not confirmed, hold your positions. What was that? Don't worry about us, just concentrate on getting away. And I have my health and my SP, which is like mana, depending on your game, down in the bottom right. And down in the bottom left, which is obscured by my logo, let me just hide my logo, is the UI reminders. And then up in the right is our task, which is what we're supposed to be doing right now, up in the top right. So this is a reminder of what is our task that we're trying to accomplish right now. Very important, especially if you're doing training. So we need to escape. So how am I going to do that? Okay, jump. Okay, that's manually progressing. That's not manually progressing. But I guess this is just flavor anyway. It's not vitally important. It's just drama. Okay. Activate the jump thing. Come on. There's a delay, which is driving me crazy right now. Getting from my PlayStation to my PC, there's a delay. So it's not reacting to my joystick immediately. If this were me playing directly on my PlayStation, it would be a really nice, seamless play. But it's not going to be, because I brought it to my PC so that I could share my screen for other things. There he is. Just run, get out of there. Respond. Flag is very important in any game, especially in XR. The lag is slightly... So the lag is slightly annoying on 2D, but if you were to look at this and if you were to be playing an XR game and you had this amount of lag where it wasn't responding to what you were doing when you're trying to do it, because you're immersed in that experience, multiple bad outcomes could happen. And this isn't against the game because, again, it's because I'm relaying my PlayStation to my PC. If it were directly on my PlayStation, there wouldn't be any lag. But it brings up the point that lag is very, very vital, that you do not have lag in your XR experiences because it's that much more frustrating, and it can also cause disorientation and motion sickness and vertigo in XR because you're immersed in that world. And when the world doesn't respond the way you expect it to, it can really mess with you. So it's very important. And this UI here, this is a turn-based Japanese RPG. So it's going to wait while we choose and decide in action. So I have an option to just use my gun, or I can choose an item to use, or guard myself, or use my persona, or just attack with a melee weapon. I'm going to use persona. And I'm going to do Brave Blade. And select my target. I can either rush or I can attack again. I'm gonna use my heavy curse damage on one foe or colossal physical damage to one foe. My target. Good, you defeated them with ease. More of them, be careful. Joker behind you, go through that door. Okay. You should be able to get out that way, hurry. Dude can even hear us. Don't worry, I'm picking up everyone's voices. Just go, Joker. Escape from the casino. Now I have a map over in the right, which tells me where the escape is. I'm trying to go to that yellow door at the end. So I'm just running. Ah, the delay is annoying. Got the dash. I forgot what dash was. R2. Okay. It's nice to have controller. Oh, that's really frustrating. Respond! Respond! Again, this lag is because it's relaying from my PC to my two different computers. Where'd they go, damn it? Can't confirm the intruder's location. Let me respond. Where am I going? I'm going right. Come on. This makes me get caught. I'm gonna be so annoyed. Oh. This is bad, hide. Yeah, I would if I could. You'll never get away if you just keep fighting. Hide in the shadows and sneak past when you see an opening. Hide. Hey, are you sure he came this way? Understood. I'll continue the search. You would want to handle all of this motion differently in XR. Because this type of motion, you want to give people options. So then you would have to think about, okay, if this were in XR and I needed to do this rapid hide, how would I do that? Maybe with a dash teleportation. It's basically what he's doing here, is dash teleportation. But then you have to give options to the player on how they handle that mitigation for motion sickness risk. Some examples of games, if you can, I'll try to remember to share some videos on teleportation in later in the show notes, or when we start talking about Rose Thorn, all of our analysis later. I'll try to remember to talk about that. But this is basically a dash teleportation. But then how would you handle all of the running and hiding if you don't have the physical space? And there are multiple ways that you can do that. And if we have time, we'll talk about that later. But these are the things that you have to think about. How would this translate? Okay, understood. I will continue the search. Okay, now I can run. As long as it will respond and let me do so, I would love to do so. Thank you. Would love to run the correct way. This very frustrating. Run the correct way. Thank you. The delay is so bad. Okay. Are you able to still see it? Okay. They're trying to figure out how to get him over there. And somebody found him. Then Papa. I think the girls are fangirling on. Child. I wish this were manually for girls. But so then a scene like this where the main character is being interrogated by somebody. How would you handle that in XR? You've got questions. Already, this game deals with mental illness and various issues that some people are more sensitive to than others. If you were, so it's already could be traumatizing to some people. However, if you put it in XR and you're the one getting interrogated, you're the one getting hit, it's first person, how would you handle that in XR, especially VR? How would you handle that in a way that does not cause trauma? Especially as we start getting more and more realistic in our experiences. Everyone's pushing for hyper-realistic. Everyone's wanting everything to look the same as it does in the real world. And when actually, no, you don't. Because that's going to start messing with your memories. And it's going to start messing with what was real, what was not. So just like at the beginning of this game, it said, this game's not real. Do you accept that? Do you not accept that? Imagine that in XR. What would the repercussions be if we were to create a hyper-realistic interrogation scene, torture scene? And we're the main player, and we can see ourselves right now, but in XR we can't see ourselves because we're the player, first person, like it is in reality. And all of these people are pushing for hyper-reality without even thinking about the repercussions of that. It's a high risk of trauma. There's a high risk of a lot of false memories and delusions that are going to start playing in if we get it to hyper-real. So there are reasons that you don't want hyper-real. And those things need to be addressed before people, because people really like to bowl into tech. Yes, we can do it. Yes, we can make it real. Yes, we can make it just like it is in real life. Because that's so cool. And then we don't think about the ethics behind that or the consequences of our actions and whether or not we actually should be doing that. That was an offside thing, but it is a very important thing to think about. So this is what we're talking about here is I have 3 choices of response now. This is where we start getting into branching narrative, branching dialogue. There's a difference between branching narrative and branching dialogue. Branching narrative is where you have a decision point that's going to change the story. Branching dialogue can change your journey and your relationships and conversations, but doesn't always change the story. It could, but not always. Sometimes it's just there for flavor and interest or to get more information for your own knowledge, but doesn't always change the story, but it can. So there's a difference between the two. Branching narrative always has decision points that change the story. Branching dialogue does not always. So I have a choice of course not. What do you mean? So what's the question? Because I've already forgotten. Are you thinking it can be used as video evidence? And I'm just going to stay silent. Enjoying it? Everything's hazy. I can't remember because they drugged him with something. Okay, so now I have a choice here. I don't remember. I usually go easy. Just because I prefer the story. There are games where I do play difficult content, but whenever it's a story like this, I usually just prefer play the story. And since we're focusing on branching narrative, I'm going to go with easy. Not necessarily safe. I do want a little bit of a challenge, but I'll go with easy. Do you wish to begin the game with easy difficulty? Yes. So it's nice. I've got a confirmation. All of these micro interactions, you see there's animation and stuff. Yes, in this case, it's more graphically out there because of the style of this game. But all of these micro interactions are very important to interactions and user confidence and so forth. So they really do matter. You can't just leave them out because you don't have time to put them in. Because you don't think it's important. They're actually very important. And now you get to choose a name for your character. This only truly matters in the multiplayer or the co-op portion, because there are options for co-op here. I'm gonna make up a name. The L2, R2 are capitalization. I can't remember what his name was in anime. And then L1, R1 are to move the cursor. Typing in, so it's painful to type on a PlayStation like this with a controller. It is also incredibly painful to type in VR. If you've never done it, it's a problem to solve in VR. There are multiple ways of doing it, but it's an important problem to solve. Move my cursor. How do I confirm? I don't want the B. I just want to finish. Move cursor, R1. But options. Okay. Okay, that's my name. Finished. So typing's a pain, but also something to keep in mind. Excuse me, but this area is off. Nijima from the public prosecutor's office. The prosecutor's office, what business do you have here? Just let me through. It's urgent. There's something I need to confirm with the suspect. Nijima-san, I believe this case is no longer in your jurisdiction. sides.
新島さえ検事です
The
か。
prosecutor Sayanijima.
たった今お宅の部長さんから電話があった。
Call from your director.
さっさと済ませてくれ。正直迷惑なんだよ。
Hurry and get it over with. To be frank, you're being an inconvenience.
やれやれ、待機を言い渡したはずだがな。
I thought I ordered you to stand by.
責任者の私が尋問も許可されないんですか？
I'm responsible for this case, yet I'm not even being allowed an interrogation.
そう言われちゃかなわんから電話をしてやった。
I'm calling because I knew you'd bring it up.
自分で確かめるまで納得できません。
I'll not be convinced unless I confirm it for myself.
これは
This is my case.
私の仕事です。
健闘を祈るよ。
Good luck to you then.
あまり期待はしてないがね。
Won't be expecting much though.
ああ、検事さん、大事なことを言い忘れた。
Prosecutor, I forgot to mention something important.
時間を切らせてもらうよ。長話は許可できない。
Your time will be cut short. We can't permit you to talk with him for long.
あんたのためだよ。
For your own sake.
何しろ奴の手口は不明なんだ。会って話すだけでも安全とは言えない。
His methods are unknown. After all, we don't even know if it's safe to simply meet and speak with him.
わかりました。 君だったとはね。
Didn't expect it to be you.
もう一度。今度は私の質問に答えてもらうわ。
You'll be answering my questions this time.
あの連中。
Bastards.
聞こえてる？いろいろあったようね。
Can you hear me? It seems you've been through a lot.
きっとここでは何でも起きるわ。私じゃ止められない。
Almost anything can happen here and I can't stop them.
だから正直に答えて。それに私も時間がないの。
Why I need you to answer me honestly. Don't have much time either.
目的は何だったの？
What was your objective?
なぜこんな大事件を引き起こしたの？
Why did you cause such a major incident?
私は最初からいたずらだとは思ってなかったわ。でも立件には持ち込めなかった。
Didn't think it was a prank from the get-go, but I couldn't assemble a case for prosecution.
手口がわからなかったから。
Because I couldn't figure out the method behind it. I have two options. So I can't remember. I don't think the main character has a voice actor. I'm not positive. Let's see. Well, he does for the cutscenes. But for this part, where you have options, we'll see. Yeah, no, there's not one. This isn't an issue of whether or not it can be used in court. So the reason I asked that and the reason I'm wondering... Hello. F Skull, sorry I missed it. Yeah, I'm playing the old school one. But this is the reason I was talking about the... Yeah, I don't have the funds to buy Royal. And I prefer the old school one, so... Talking about it. So, the reason I was talking about the voice actors was because with branching narrative, branching dialogue, there are so many options and so many choices, and they have to figure out a way of handling the voice acting. And one choice would have been to let the voice actor for a main character say every possible variation of option of dialogue that you've given to the player to choose, which would take a lot of time. And if it changes in the course of the game production, then it would require you bringing back the voice actor to re-record everything, or like in this case, the solution was to the actual main character with all of the dialogue options doesn't talk. There's no voice actor for it unless there's a cutscene. That's a way of saving money and production cost and time, which is going to still be relevant if it's in VR, depending on the situation, because it could just be your own voice in VR. This is an issue of whether or not it can be used in court. I need to know. This is my case after all. Seems you're coherent. When and where did you find out about that world? How is it even possible to steal another's heart? Now tell me your account of everything. Start from the very beginning. You're held captive. Prisoner of fate to a future that's been sealed in advance. This is truly an unjust game. Your chances of winning are almost none. But if my choice is reaching you, there may yet be a possibility open to you. Beg you please overcome this game and save the world. The key to victory lies within the memories of your bonds, the truth that you and your friends grasped. It all began that day when the game was started half a year ago. For the sake of your world's future as well as your own, you must remember. You like to save your current progress. Not. So let's see what I saved, what I played in the past. Completed. It doesn't say what I played in the past. Unless it was easy mode. I let other people try, so I'm not sure, but I think probably easy mode, yeah. I was in it for the story, not the challenge. Okay. Back. We haven't had much of an option here yet to have branching narrative.
Thank you for using this line.
訴えてやる。 当だって。いきなり人間が？冗談でしょ？あんた本当にオカルト話好きだよね。
Just chatter from girls not important to the story. And the dates in this game matter a lot too. It's time-based. And if you miss certain deadlines, you fail. If you're ever confused about what to do or where to go next, look to the upper right corner of the screen to view your various hints. So this is what we're talking about, your quest, your goals of your game. And if you're doing training, this is very important to remind them what is the goal, what is it they're trying to achieve, what's their next step in whatever it is you're training them to do. This is also a very important game mechanic, game mental model and expectation to include in games, as well as maps of the world, depending on, of course, what it is, the objective of the game. But if it's just a normal game, you would include maps to help people make their way around the world. Pop-ups would be handled differently in XR because pop-ups can be incredibly annoying. You would have to figure out, okay, now how would I handle... You don't want a pop-up popping up and obscuring the entire world in XR. It's going to be absolutely incredibly annoying. And could accidentally... It could cause an accident physically in the real world. So you don't want that. So pop-ups have to be, thank God, rethought out because they're so annoying in 2D. So I'm not sure how much option we have within the time that I have to actually get to a point where there's a point of decision that changes the narrative. No one's been taking responsibility. It's a waste of time to dwell on it. Oh, this is frustrating, trying to move on this delay. I need to exit and head to my lodging. But if you've ever played a Persona game, you'll know that at least the two, I've only played 2. I've played 4 and 5. And they are very dependent on dates. If you miss a certain date, a certain deadline, it's going to cause some bad repercussions. Because the point is to stop certain events from happening by a certain time. Starting today, Sojiro Sakura will be taking care of me. His house should be in the back streets of the residential area. Talking to people. All sorts of people live in the city. Try listening to their conversations or press the X button to talk to them. You might learn something new. So we see indicators above people's heads. We've got our map. Telling us where we need to go. Unfriendly officer. Seems to be the norm in that world. Yes. Want to ask for directions? But he does. You want to get to the residence at that address. In an alley a bit further back, take the right after the apartment with the stairs. So he's not horribly unfriendly, at least yet. Someone's talking down here. So this is something that could directly be translated into XR, no problem. Is there another accident? I see a policeman over there. Oh, he was just watching to make sure everyone's safe. It'd be scary if something like that happened again, though. Let's hurry home. So to access the map is R1. How would you open and close maps in XR? There are multiple games that, like Zenith, for one. I haven't played Zenith yet. I don't have it because I can't be guaranteed that I can play it without motion sickness. So I have not played it yet, but I can also, if you have that issue and you want to study an XR game, it's not ideal, but you could just find videos of someone else playing it. But if you have an issue with motion sickness like I do, but of course it is always best to get in the game and try it for yourself. And I will at some point, but I'm putting off the motion sickness. So I think I wasn't actually paying attention to where I was supposed to go. Yeah. Ah, the delay is so bad. Go down this alley. Oh, stop! The delay is so terrible. Come on. Did it? Even after ringing the doorbell, it doesn't look like anyone will answer the door. Maybe he's gone out. Like no one's home. Oh yeah, Sakura-san's usually at his cafe around this time. Well, LeBlanc's in the back alley, so I should make my other deliveries first. Next I need to take this package too. Okay, so I just found out by listening in on his talking to himself that I have to go somewhere else. And this delay on the controller's really bad and it's frustrating me, so yes. Now let's talk about some branching narrative and how this is going to translate into XR. So let me switch over to the work. And while I'm switching over, were there any aha moments that you had about anything that I've said so far about XR and translating into XR? Feel free to type that in the chat. Hey, I've got to catch this another time, busy projects, but just wanted to say, hey, in Persona series is great. Almost done with my first playthrough. Thank you for these insightful videos. Oh, you're welcome. Thanks. Thanks for stopping by. Let me... So, after each playthrough, we play through for a little bit, we'll do what's called a rose thorn bed exercise. And this is where we, and you can check it in the show notes as well, this is where we talk about what's going well, what's not going well, and what would we do about it if it were our experience. So this is where we're getting to that critical thinking of game design. Again, this is not just for us playing it for entertainment. Whenever we're getting into the game design or XR design, regardless of whether you're creating games or XR, even training or productivity apps, the mental models carry over regardless. So you want to have critical thinking whenever you're playing games, get past the awe factor, because again, like I said, I am a fangirl of Persona 5. I absolutely love the graphics. I love the game. Yes, there are some issues with it, but they are not so much so that it would stop me from, it would make me rage quit. I completed the game. The graphics, everything's great. But you want to think critically about this if you're designing your own game or if you're wanting to get into XR again. So this is where we get past our awe factor and start looking at this as a design exercise. So for roses, what went well, and I'll put that up on the screen, we're talking about roses. What was a highlight? So, and we do this based on, again, UX best practices, but also the experience. I liked at the very beginning, it was a creative solution for the warning at the beginning. Addressing illusion versus reality, real versus not real at the beginning. And then if you don't agree, it actually takes you back to the beginning. They may have done it just as entertainment, but there's a serious aspect to that. And I also like that it was manual progression, dialogue is the default setting. I think you can change that setting because there were options in there to make changes, but you can, it's by default manual progression, which is what I've been saying for ages. And maybe this is what taught me that is, especially when you're dealing with XR, manual progression is very important, and especially training in XR, because you need them to understand and not miss very important information. And if it's automatically progressing, then people could miss very important information. It happens in 2D all the time. In VR or in XR, it's going to also happen for sure. Especially when there's something going on outside of the headset that's going to distract them from what's going on inside the headset. So the manual progression of the dialogue is the default setting, which I like a lot. The graphics, of course. The music, of course. Alright, top quality. Okay, what was another thing that I had said? And this is where that teamwork aspect would come in here live on stream, is if this were an actual analysis or an actual work project of something, a team would be taking notes together. And so that's how you can participate, whether now or on demand later, is you can take notes in the chat and in the comments. If you're not live, add comments. If you're here live, add it in the chat. But helping take notes and observations while it's playing, because if we wait until after, like I'm doing now, I forget like half of what I said. So I'm not taking notes as I go, which would make it go a lot slower if I did. But if there's a team and everyone else is taking notes as well, then that's what makes the teamwork of the analysis so much more efficient and better if you're doing this for an actual project. I don't remember what else I said. So it's teaching you it's teaching you the mechanics as you go and as you experience the story. You go. As you progress the story. And it starts out with a very interesting, action-packed story there at the very beginning. Compelling, action-packed onboarding. It sets your expectations and for gameplay and story-rich content. I might have to go play this game again. Like I said, Persona 5 Royals, what, like $60? I don't have the funds for that. I have other things to spend $60 on, like food. So I won't be getting it anytime soon unless something happens. But I absolutely love Persona 5 Original. And when I was looking at the difference in the graphics between Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal, I'm sure the story is great. I'm sure it's a great game. Pretty positive it's a great game. But I love the classic. I love the original. The graphics and the choices that they made for that. They've added some 3D elements to the new game. It looks like from just looking at the videos. And I hear it's an awesome game. But I'm not in a huge hurry to play it, first of all, because of the cost, but also because the graphics style is a little bit different. So anyway, that's expectations for the gameplay and the story-rich content. And it has both branching dialogue and branching narrative. It doesn't really have branching narrative. It has branching dialogue. Let's think about it. So I know this because I've played it before and not because you saw it here on stream today, but your dialogue choices determine relationships and your actions determine. So yeah, I guess so. There is branching narrative in the fact that your actions determine relationships and quality of relationships. So there's both branching narrative and branching dialogue, which can then change the journey. It doesn't necessarily change the overall story, but it changes the journey, how you get there, and who's with you as you go. So both branching narrative and branching dialogue. Dialogue and actions determine relationships and the details of the journey through the overarching story. The overarching story, I'm not sure there are different outcomes. This one. I think the overarching story stays the same, but then I think this would be called a bottleneck. And if you look in the show notes, you'll see a link to an article about multi-branching narrative, and it shows you the different types of branching narrative there is. String of pearls, bottleneck, and so forth. And I think this might be a bottleneck. because you can choose what you do in the time. Okay, so I also like that the journey is, the game is set around dates, specific dates, and events are happening on specific dates. If you miss a date, there are consequences. How do you spell consequence? And I'm not going to spoil it for you if you haven't played the game, but there are consequences. Trying to think of anything else. I'll probably think of more things as we go, but I want to move on to Thorns. So Thorns are things that didn't go well. What was the low point? Now we want to do both roses and thorns because we want to know the roses because we want to learn from the good things. But we aren't just there to like pat ourselves on the back. We also need to think about, okay, what can we make better? And if this were a real life project that we were working on, that we would be doing what's called competitive landscape right now on someone who has already solved a problem. So this would be where we critically think about this game. What are the problems with this game? Because we want to make sure that we don't do that in ours. We're making one, right? We want to make sure we're learning from their mistakes, filling in gaps. So the thorns are the things, the low points, what did not go well, what did we not like. But in our case, since we're thinking about pillars of gaming UX and the best practices for XR UX design, here I put a link in the chat. Hopefully the bot will, yes, if it work, we'll just give you the link to that video, but that you can watch later. It's Pillars of Gaming UX. By talks Celia Hodian. I talk about her book, Gamer's Brain. And we're thinking about that from that perspective. And that is usability and engageability, science, feedback, clarity, form follows function, consistency, minimum workload. Like our interactions are not unnecessarily cumbersome. And error prevention, recovery, flexibility. And then engageability is something specific for games and entertainment, and depending on your experience, possibly training as well. Motivation, emotion, game flow. These are the things that engage you and keep you motivated to continue. Besides just, if you don't take this training, you'll get fired. There needs to be more to it than that. So, okay, Thorns. What was the low point? There was something that I was saying I didn't like. Okay, so I changed the settings and then it didn't keep them. Changed them twice and it didn't keep them. So I changed language, Japanese, actually 3 times if you count the original time I played the game. And then when I came back into the game later, I left the game and came back. Settings changed back to English. I just really don't like English voice acting. Japanese is so much better, and since this was a Japanese game made in Japan, they would know the emotions, and by the original game makers, they would know, hey, the emotion we want, this is what, yeah, it's just a better job. They're just more skilled at voice acting. So anyway, leave the game, come back, and everything changed back to English. And this happened at least 3 times, right? Twice in the last 2 days. I'll start the game and realize, oh, it's in Japanese, even though I said it in Japanese. Okay, and then some of the cutscenes were not, had no manual progression. However, they did have subtitles. I appreciate it. I'm wondering if that's because I changed a setting somewhere. Maybe. So there was one thing that I missed some dialogue because I was looking at make sure everything was still working. Stream, and I missed something. I don't know what it was because I missed it. What else was something that I didn't like? It's not related to the game, so I'm not going to put it down there, but that whole delay that's happening because I'm taking it from my PlayStation to my PC was driving me crazy, trying to just move around the world because the joystick's responding on a delay, and then I'm overshooting, and so that's a problem. So, but that's not the game's fault, that's because of my setup for streaming. Wonder if that's why I was having such trouble with Walking Dead the other day. Should try it directly on the PlayStation again to see if that was the issue. I'll do that later. But let's see, what was something else? Let's see if I can think here. So this teaching you as you go thing is really important to engagement game. And it's something that's I've seen in older VR games. They're getting better, but they'll just show you at the beginning, and this happens in 2D games as well. They'll just show a screen that says all of the things, all the way that you interact and everything. They expect you to memorize that. And then they plop you into the game and don't teach you anything else. No reminders or anything. This is not how human brains work. We need to learn as we go. This is how we work in real life. This is how we learn in real life. This is how we learn in games. And we forget things if we don't do them often. So we have to be reminded in real life and in games. So teaching you mechanics as you go, and then also including little tooltips and memory cues like they have in the bottom left of this screen. Tells you what button does what. That is important too. I should probably include that in here, tooltips and memory cues. Included. And they're on the right controller. But of course, it's PlayStation, so this we're on a PC, sometimes it does the wrong one. What else did I not like? Was there... That was the super annoying thing. That was unfortunate. Not all of the cutscenes had subtitles either. Some did, some didn't. And that spell. Cutscenes had subtitles. Some did, some didn't. I think that where the dialogue was, where the dialogue was important. the rest of the time it's just like chit chat and oh, there he is, and things like that, which isn't gonna stop you from understanding what's going on. Or the girls chatting about whatever it was they were on about the phone they were looking at. That wasn't important. That was just girls being girls. So if it's important, you need to show it in more than one way, not just rely on audio. That's all I can think of right now. So if you think of any more, if you noticed anything else, you go ahead and put that in at now or later in the comments, and we'll switch to buds now. So the buds are the things that, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about the issues? What are our next steps in our own project if this were a real project? So, like, what opportunities do we see from how we played this? What would we do differently if this were ours, or if this was our project originally, and what we do differently next time as a learning point and for growth? And then what questions do we have? What follow-up do we have? So we ideally, at the very least, want at least one bud per thorn. We can have more buds than thorns for sure. That would be great. But we want to at least have one bud per thorn because we want to address the things that are wrong, the things that are issues. It's not just about a complaining game. It's about fixing what's wrong. So let's have at least one bud per thorn. So it changed to the Japanese language. This may be a bug. So then we would want to report that bug. We would try to replicate it on other machines and see if it's a bug. It's definitely not designed that way on purpose. I would hope not. Hope not. And then if it's a bug, we would report it. We would report it to our team. So that they could address it, put in a bug report. And if it's not a bug, if it's by design, don't do that. Don't do that. If it was by design, talk to the team, see if it's a bug or if it's replicated on other seeds, and also talk to see if it's a bug. If it's a bug, report to the team. If it's by design, don't do that. Fix it. Fix it. Because you would expect, this is an expectation. That save means save. Save means save. Okay, so some cutscenes had no manual progression. So you would discuss this as a team. Whether or not manual progression is needed. And I would say also this would be research. Play testing with the target audience in their own settings, not a lab. Because we want to know what it's like in real life, not in a lab. Because a lab setting has its benefits, but if we're talking about gameplay over time, and we're talking about human behavior when they're playing games, we need to know what it's like in their own setting, because their own setting is going to be very, very different than a lab. The same thing would be for any type of mobile experience, like XR, heads up, mixed reality when we've got it out in the world and we're using it out in the world. Mobile phones, mobile apps. We need to test them out in the world, because there are things that we don't. If it's in a lab setting, when we're doing that type of testing, it's too controlled. Real life's not controlled. So how does it behave out in the world? Now you can control it to a degree, because you can control what the user's doing and so forth to a degree. Like you set like rules of engagement for them. Like, but there's a way of doing it. You can do it still scientifically while out in the world. Anthropology. As opposed to lab. So not all cutscenes had would use an anthropology approach instead of a evaluative approach. So more generative. Okay. Not all the cutscenes had subtitles. And this would be yet another discussion. Make sure the important dialogue is accompanied with text, not just sound, not just audio. And it would be nice to give a way to pause. Consider giving an option to pause. Because I was looking for a way to pause the cutscene. I couldn't find one. Especially if it's a longer cutscene. Pause or replay. You would consider it, okay? I'm not prescribing do this thing. You would consider it, weigh the options, do your research, and decide from that point. So that would be a next step. And then we could definitively say, if this were a project, okay, we're going to add a post-it saying, next step, let's conduct some research. And these are the goals of our research. What are we wanting to find out? And then, so let's think about how we would translate this into XR. So I'm thinking. I've got a lot of thinking going on in my brain. As far as, and I already mentioned it about that one cutscene about the hyper-realism. You have to think through the ethics of hyper-realism. Especially with certain types of games. Or topics. For example, mental health issues. And violence. For two. Right? In XR specifically. It's not you can separate yourself from it if it's in 2D. But if you're immersed in it, that's a completely different thing. more possible to separate yourself from a 2D screen. But if you're immersed in it, and it's hyper real, can cause trauma. And it can cause false memories. Which can then affect your own health and your own mental state. Their player health, their mental state. So, like, for example, the torture scene where he was being interrogated. So, said that earlier. I don't remember what all I said, but you're in first person. In XR, you're in first person. You're not having an out-of-body experience. Watching someone else get hit. It's you. And psychologically, even though we're in XR, we are embodied in that experience, in that world. So then that brings up embodiment. Okay, yeah. So that is something to learn about. Let me get the link to that then. So browser. Nope. I will just look it up real quick. YouTube, grab my video, or search my videos for embodiment. See, do I have one? I think I'm not going to be under that name. No, I don't. I do on my website. Go there. Well, I can share you the psychological one. So you can see what I'm doing. Doesn't want to let me. Okay, there it is. Maybe. Not previewing it. It doesn't want to preview it. I'm working on OBS and it doesn't want to. Don't want to cooperate. Fine. So I will find the video later and share it later in the comments. I'll pin a comment. But you're gonna want to check out, for best practices, we're gonna check out some videos on embodiment and presence and phobias. We're going to want to talk about memories and tooltips, memory cues, tooltips for sure. And I mentioned earlier that you would, when you were thinking about this, you would also want to think about your options for your dash hiding that they do in the game. There are options. It seems like it's a teleport dash. If you were translating this to XR, maybe you want to use a teleport dash for that. Then I've got a video on teleportation that I can share. I'll pin a comment later, or you can just, after this, go look for these yourself, but I will add them to the show notes later after this. If you want to check the video later. Locomotion options, because again, motion sickness is a big deal in XR. So you want to make sure that you are designing this in a way that doesn't... How do you add all of those awesome graphics details and everything without making people sick? And there's like a sneak attack later. How would you handle that? And still give people options. The sneak attack is where you come up behind them and jump on them and attack them, but how would you handle that in XR in a way that's not going to make you sick? And also, and then how would you handle the motion graphics? Translating that into XR is going to be a big deal. In a way that doesn't make people sick. So I have some videos on motion sickness. I have a motion sickness playlist that I'll also add. Check that out if you want later, but I'll add that to the notes. I'll add it to the show notes after this because it's taking too long. The motion graphics, locomotion, really big hyper-realism, because I'm seeing more and more posts on LinkedIn about people experimenting with hyper-realism in XR, and actually, no, we want to think about that seriously. There's a reason that so far, besides just performance, that people have not been making hyper-realistic experiences that has to do with psychology. People think they want things, but actually, no, we can be very wrong about what we want because we don't know the potential consequences and repercussions of those things. Motion for this game, the style of this game, the motion graphics, I would say, would be the biggest thing. But then also, and you might see I have pictures up here, translating the UI into a spatial experience. Now, people have actually already been thinking about this for 5. This is the only game that you will ever see people cosplaying the UI. And we see right here they've already got a solution for how would you translate this into 3-dimensional UI. Maybe. So it depends, and you have to think through it seriously. It's a turn-based RPG with branching narrative and dialogue and choices. Choices matter. But here we see the UI is around the character just like it is in the game when we get to our fight scene. We have all of our options around it with all of the controller buttons already here showing, and then there's a little tooltip that says what you're doing. Using an item, defending yourself with your main name, use a skill, change tactics, aim your gun and use your gun, or use your melee weapon. And it's all surrounding the character as you go through your turn-based solution. And here's one solution that people have already thought about for translating the UI into XR. How would this translate into, how would you even do a turn-based game in XR, in VR? How would you handle that character UI as you choose between which of your NPC characters that you're playing with are going to fight? And versus you as your first person. And I am planning to study turn-based RPGs and think about this in the future. Are there any, do y'all know if there are any existing turn-based RPGs out there in VR or are that headset, head-mounted display experiences? Let me know if there are any VR experiences out there already, because I want to look at them in the future, because once I'm done with branching narrative, I need to pick my next thing, and maybe that's turn-based RPG. But how would that even be handled? Because that would need to be explored. Because you have, because you are in first person, so your UI is going to need to be different than the other characters. And the other characters in your party. Unless it's a multiplayer turn-based. So you've got 2 different types. You've got a solo turn-based. So you'd have to think about solo turn-based versus multiplayer turn-based. I don't have to say turn-based. And then how would those be interpreted? Because again, you're in first person in XR, but that doesn't necessarily mean that if you're a party-based, turn-based RPG that your other NPCs could be traveling with you, and then when it's their turn to fight, how do you choose their UI? And I like this solution. It's pretty cool. The UI's around the character still, but it's all in space. It's not on a boring little screen in front of you. You don't want that. You don't want everything to just be a 2D UI. You want spatial experiences. You want to take advantage of the space. So now let's think about, you would want to think about that. And then, so there's another video that I'll share later, 2D UI versus 3D objects. And I'll share that one later as well. Now, what about branching narrative? And here, I just want to make the comment that if you can get people to cosplay your UI, you have achieved greatness in the world and in life. If you can get people to cosplay your UI. I've Googled cosplay, UI cosplay. This is the only thing I've been able to find where this is the only game where they actually cosplay the UI. So that is an example of a great UI design. If you want to look into like all the different aspects of the branching narrative for Persona 5, I have included, I think in the show notes, let me double check. I've included the IGN game guide for Persona 5, the original. Double check. If I haven't, I will. Yeah, it's here. It's in the show notes. If you scroll down under Learn More about XR and Gaming UX, it's in there, the Persona 5 guide, along with that multi-branching narratives article where you can learn about branching narrative. But you can also, if you want to look into all of the different things, the different options for the branching narrative and the branching dialogue, a good thing would be to go look at game guides and see what are all these different options, because this is what, if I were designing my own experience, this is what I would have to come up with, or my team would have to come up with. And I also see a lot of students who don't, they just start in XR and they will pick a personal project, because it'll give them an option of picking a personal project to apply what they've learned. And they'll immediately want to make a multiplayer game with all of these mechanics, just like, you know, the game they play, their favorite game. But they're doing it by themselves, and they're brand new. This is not a realistic expectation, unless you're a prodigy. Most of us are not. You have to have a team. Let's just look at how Persona 5 was created. Persona 5 it took 5 years for Persona 5 to become reality. 5 years. And a huge team. So if you want to have an idea of all of the information and the detail that goes into the creation of a game, this is the screen. This is the play guide, the official player's guide for Persona 5 Original. This one's in Japanese, but look at how thick this thing is. And it's jam-packed full of detail about the different dungeons and all the monsters that you're gonna come across in the different dungeons. Got detail about all the drop items, all of the melee weapons, all of the monsters, all of the skills, all of the different options and challenges and what's happening when, on what date. All of that detail, and look at how small the writing is. Here. This is a schedule of what's happening when. Look at all that detail. That's just one page. And look how tiny that writing is. All of this detail goes into one game. Yes, it's an amazing game, but to set reality straight here, this is how much effort and how much detail. And this is just the guide. It's not the actual making of the thing. This is just all of the information about it. This is what it takes to make a game like Persona 5. So setting realistic expectations for your first project is important, because you're going to get disillusioned otherwise, and you're going to quit, and we don't want that. But know that you can, if you want to someday work on a team that it is possible, but you're gonna need a team, especially if you want to create a great experience, such as Persona 5. So if you want to check out, I don't have it in there yet. I can add it and show this later. You can just search for it. Game guides for whatever game that it is that you're interested in. I've got game guides for both Ni no Kuni's, Ni no Kuni games, and that one from Muramasa. But you can also just look online. On IGN has all kinds of game guides. And you can study those game guides and see how much detail goes into this stuff. And that's just the surface. It's not the behind the scenes of what it took to actually make it so. But it gives you an idea of what, it gives you a surface level idea of what effort goes into it. But any questions or anything, y'all type those in the chat or in the comments later. And that is all that I can think of for today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. And yeah, I'll see y'all next time. Have a good